We'll call the meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Ms. Stone? Here. Mr. Casablancas? Mr. Papadakis? Ms. Ramsey? Here. Mr. Lee?
Here.
Ms. Register?
Here.
Mr. Phillips?
Here.
Chairman Webster?
Here. Okay, do we have a motion with respect to the minutes for the November 13th meeting?
So moved.
Do we have a second? Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Passes unanimously. Okay. Public comments. Do we have any public comments on matters not on the agenda? Moving on. Item number 5, DEV 2013 rezoning planned development Daytona Screamers Park was continued from last month, and we also have item number 6, which is DEV 101 site plan for Daytona Screamers Park. Are we going to do those kind of together, Reed, or?
Yes,
Okay.
you have one memorandum in your packet which covers both items, and we'll handle the rezoning part first. But typically, when we have a PRD, we're always looking at a site plan, and this request really takes it one step further in terms of getting the site plan in front of us as well, with a lot more detail, so
Okay.
than we
And how-
might see in a PRD.
How would you like to proceed? Do you want to give a little intro, or are we going to go straight to the applicant?
You know, I think at this point, I think it would be best if we could, and if the applicant wants to, give its presentation. Sure. And so you can get the flavor of what they're attempting to do, and then I can jump in with comments.
Okay, very good.
Okay.
Tom, do you want to get up and introduce yourself and your team? And
Yes, thanks, Dan. Good evening, members of the board. I'm Tom Sullivan with the Lowndes Law Firm, 215 North Eola Drive, Orlando, on behalf of the applicant on this request. I also have Richie Armstrong here with me with the Global Fun Time Group. That's the developer for the project, and Parker Minchenberg, our civil engineer. We did prepare a PowerPoint presentation, which we'll walk through in a minute, which Parker will take you through. I'd just like to make a couple points before we get started with the PowerPoint. And the first is we're genuinely excited about this project. We think this is an excellent opportunity for this developer to grow as a contributing member in the Daytona business community. As I suspect you know, Richie's company is the same. It's a sister company that operates the existing Slingshot ride above the arcade. They've been there since 2004, I believe, so about 10 years in the city. That particular space, just to give you a little bit of background about why we're part of the reason why we're going through this process is that space is leased. It's kind of on a short month-to-month lease. And to that end, it's not an ideal long-term fit to be at that space. So to that end, we've put the property that we've brought forth to you tonight under contract for purchase. And our vision for the property is to really create a world-class attraction that will be an asset to the city at this location. And we think this project does that. The project would feature 3 different rides, including a brand-new Slingshot ride. And just to be clear, that ride would replace the ride that's above the arcade today. So that would go away as part of this. All of these rides have successful track records around the country and internationally as well. These aren't kind of new guinea pig rides at all. They've been successful in a number of different areas, which I'll talk about in a minute. But we see this project as a great fit for this area, and we think it'll be an opportunity to transform a vacant lot that's been vacant, I think, for a number of years. And our goal is to create, as I mentioned, a world-class, but also a year-round attraction. This isn't a special.
could I interrupt for-
Sure.
Randy and Carrie, do you guys want to come around here so you can see better?
Sure.
I mean, because there's some
Yeah,
this
it's-
going on. I think
right,
you'd be a
right.
whole lot better served than not be acting blind. And it seems like we have a few empty seats tonight. So
Sure. So I think, again, we're trying to create a year-round attraction. It's not special event driven. A little bit of background on the company before I turn it over to Parker. The Global Fun Time Group is a very successful company, rides all around the country, including throughout Six Flags locations around the country. In Florida, we've got the ride above the arcade, that everyone's familiar with, but we've also got a ride on a presence in Panama City Beach, International Drive in Orlando, and Old Town in Kissimmee. And by the way, all of those projects are similar in size and scope to what we're talking about here. the Fun Time Group is unique in the sense that they manufacture and operate their rides. That's kind of a distinguishing feature between the company and others in the industry. A lot of companies will manufacture or operate. They do both, so they'd actually be creating these rides in their own factory, shipping them over here, and installing them. So with that introduction, I'll ask Parker to share the PowerPoint with you.
Thank you.
Thomas. Good evening, everybody. Happy holidays. Parker Minchenberg, 1729 Ridgewood Avenue. I've got a PowerPoint presentation. We just push this and we get it?
And this is what you've also handed out to us also,
Yeah.
correct?
Mhm.
Okay.
I'm looking at the second page in your handout. It's basically an aerial photograph. So I thought I'd take a minute, kind of orient you to the site. To the south is the existing 7-Eleven. To the west is State Road A1A. And you can see a few parking stalls to the east. Those were actually some of the parking stalls that I had the pleasure of designing for the city a number of years ago when I designed Ocean Park for the city. So that's public parking that you would pay to be in. Then to the north is approximately 60 parking spaces, which is additionally public parking. This is the view currently from A1A looking toward the beach. You can kind of see the grade drop from the back to the front in this photo. About 8 foot of drop, and I'll show you in a little bit. We've got some ADA ramps proposed to provide handicap access through the project as well as to the project. So that's the view looking from A1A east. This is the next slide, and it's a view looking from the Ocean Avenue to the west, and you can see the back of the white fence that was in the previous photograph. Doesn't quite show you the drop. Over to the right is the existing city pump station right behind that little white fence. I also had the pleasure of designing that. And then there's the enclosed dumpsters for Joe's Crab that were built a year or so ago in that kind of tangerine, orange-looking building. Those house refrigerated waste from Joe's Crab. Okay, this is getting into the rendering we prepared for the site plan. And I think I'm going to flip through this to the landscape plan because it shows some of the same information. When the city did the A1A streetscape, there was a pattern and a paver selected for the sidewalk along A1A. Currently, the sidewalk is 5 feet wide. Our proposal is to make this more like a park setting and kind of coexist with the park next to it and behind it. So we've increased that walkway to 12 feet, and we're picking up the paver color and pattern that was designed for A1A. So that's along the A1A frontage. In the rear, you see kind of a gray-looking paver. That matches the pavers that we designed for Ocean Park. So it ties into the Learning Center and the city park to the east. Landscaping, we're proposing double rows of sable palms, and then similar to Main Street, recently did some parking lot design there. We've got tree grates with palm trees. That's really the tree that makes it this close to the ocean. You can't do things like oaks and elms, they don't make it. So it's going to be primarily palm trees, and then we have a continuous hedge, and then we have crepe myrtles. And the city staff has reviewed these site plans and landscape plans and has found them acceptable. The next slide gives you a view of our proposed entrance from A1A. Many years ago, I was a consultant that designed the Main Street approach underneath the Coquina Archway. And my office designed the Welcome to Daytona with the sunburst that you drive under. Another consultant more recently did a similar feature at ISB. So with Brian Fredley, the architect, we took those elements and came up with this feature to tie in what's happening at the Main Street approach and at the ISB approach. So the Screamers Park opening is 15 feet wide. It's high enough to allow an emergency vehicle. So it's not something that cars would drive into, but if there's an emergency, it's an emergency access for the development. There's also a small sign panel, 24 square feet. It's not a huge sign, but that would be the sign that you would see from A1A. The next slide is the revised signage plan. One of the things that happened and why we continued from last month's meeting is we got the staff comments a couple days before the meeting. You guys probably realize that too. And we had a lot of comments about signage. So we took the last few weeks to come back to the city with better signage, I guess, or more acceptable signage. So we've made a resubmittal, and I'll show you the next slide. Previously, we had some signs on the rides, we had some rooftop signs, and we got the comments a couple days before the last redevelopment board meeting. The city staff, Reed's office, had taken some exception to the signs. So we got with them and we came up with a sign plan, and Reed can speak to how much he likes it now, but I think we've satisfied that concern. We took the signs off the rides and came up with a different design, and you see those here. And by the way, if anybody has any questions on any of these while I'm going through it, don't hesitate to interrupt me, because I'm happy to answer any questions. Kind of doing this kind of on a casual. So I'm going to flip through a few of those signs. One of the things that's kind of interesting about a project like this to me, you know, I've lived in Daytona Beach my whole life, graduated from Mainland High School. It's kind of interesting where you have somebody comes to town and they want to get a project off the ground. And this is a good instance where they had to spend tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars to get to a point where they have a final site plan. And now they're asking you guys for permission to rezone the property. So I want to make that statement only because I do a lot of work for different developers, municipalities. This is first class, top notch, in my opinion. Kind of no expense barred. We're doing all pavers. We're doing metal roof with hardy plank buildings, and they're kind of indicated here. So all the structures and all the site plan improvements are A+ in my opinion. So this shows a couple of different buildings. We've got a storage service building is the first slide. We're calling this the Omni building is the second slide. And you're going to see some ticket booths and some other buildings. They're all metal roof, hardy plank, which, you know, isn't your typical block with stucco or painted block. And then the last slide here are some of the small ticket booths and some of the small equipment areas. Okay, now we're getting into the rendering that was prepared by the architect and his artist. And this shows you the 3 rides that are proposed. On the right side is a ride that's called the Terror Drop. This is Screamers Park, by the way. And then the taller looking kind of V shape, that's the Slingshot. And then the one that sort of has the buckets on both ends is the Vomitron. I've registered this project with the FAA. We're just barely into their zone. We're going to get a formal response from them, but basically going to have navigation lights on the top of them, and FAA is going to approve it. And speaking about the permits, we've got the St. John's, we've got the DOT permits, so it's sort of fully permitted. Unfortunately, we don't know whether we're going to get approval of the zoning, but as soon as we get approval, they're going to construction. And talking about that a little bit, between the property and these rides, we're talking about a $4 to $5 million improvement to make this happen. Here's another view, kind of gives you an idea of how the buildings look with the palm trees, and another direction at the rides. And this rendering, the last one, was made before we finished the design of the archway from A1A, but it does give you a flavor for the metal roofs on the buildings, the white signage. You can see on the right side is the ADA handicap ramp that allows people from Ocean to get in a wheelchair to the central point of the site, as well as from A1A. Then this next slide, there was some comments about how are we putting 3 rides on .35 acres? And, you know, I think it's being represented that it may be too crowded. I also was involved in the design and permitting of the Ferris wheel and the roller coaster. And it's, here's a picture, I believe this is Orlando, right? Project that Ritchie, they constructed and operate. And it's just the nature of these type of things to provide the excitement and what have you. So this is pretty common on how these things are set up. In this particular picture, there's a slingshot, a vomatron, a go-kart track, and some other amusement things going on here. This is another view from one of the towers that happens to be next to this particular ride. And again, it shows a vomatron and a Terra drop, just another example of a product that Ritchie's group has put together. And then the last one shows another facility that's got a go-kart track and a slingshot, and you kind of get a feel for how they fit in. This next exhibit, before we got involved in moving forward with this, the first thing we did, because of an experience the same developer had on trying to locate a slingshot on the pier, they answered an RFP and got pretty far down the road with the city, but in the end, it was decided to not put the slingshot on the pier. At that time, it was actually recommended to the client that they look at a couple other sites for it, and this happened to be one of them. So we moved forward with that, and then we went in and met with TRT, the planning staff, to see if there was a lot of objections, because we knew we were getting ready to spend a number of $10,000 bills to put together what you guys are seeing today. And we knew that we weren't consistent with the E-zone plan. I was here before you a couple of months ago with a project that wasn't consistent with the E-zone plan. I believe the E-zone plan has this as public, wanted to be added to the park, but to date, it's sitting there, it's kind of a hole, and we now have somebody that has a contract to purchase it and wants to move forward with a $4 to $5 million investment to bring a world-class ride to Daytona. This exhibit that's before us now is an exhibit that kind of looks at the public parking nearby. And, you know, again, being somebody that grew up in Daytona, when it comes to Bike Week or it comes to Spring Break or some of the other events that we have, there's no parking on Main Street. There's no parking beachside. You know, try to go to the ocean deck or whatever during the season, you're really not able to park next to them. So when we did the design for the rides at the boardwalk, because they were on the boardwalk, that particular zoning doesn't require any parking. So you're going to see in the staff report, they've come up with 30-some spots are required. I don't really have any information in any of my exhibits and parking calculations that really tell you how to calculate parking spaces required for a ride. But I can tell you this ride, compared to the number of seats in the roller coaster, the number of seats in the Ferris wheel, using that calculation that is in your staff report, there'd probably be 100 spots that we needed for the Ferris wheel and the roller coaster and the tilt-a-whirl over there. So we understand that we're not providing parking, but on 4 occasions over the last couple months, we've kind of done a survey of the parking lot that's immediately adjacent to this. We had a neighborhood meeting about 2 months ago. It was about 7 o'clock. Went by the site to just see what was happening. There was about 6 cars in the parking lot. So one of the points I want to make is, if this ride was up and running, these rides were, the city gets revenue from those parking stalls. You would get revenue year-round from this, whereas right now, like I said, on at least 3 occasions, I've been there, and the parking lot's not very heavily used at certain times. Now, again, if it was spring break or it was bike week, it'd be jam-packed. But this will help with off-season providing revenue for the city, because that's you guys' lots that are surrounding this. And then this exhibit also kind of shows you the distance from this project to the parking at Peabody, to the parking at the Ocean Center. We have been meeting with city commissioners and, wanted to get them kind of up to speed. And very recently, we were out with one of the commissioners, and we were standing there, and she looked and she says, "I can see the parking garage from here." And I go, "Yeah. If you can't find a spot nearby, kind of if you're energetic enough to want to ride the slingshot, you probably can walk from the Peabody lot or from the Ocean Center parking." So this kind of shows you how many parking spaces are available in the area. And again, admittingly, if it's a peak event, parking's scarce down there, but there's probably 3 to 330 days the rest of the year when it's not scarce, and it'll bring more people down to the park. I think it's important, too, that this was designed trying to be an expansion to the park, like it's part of the park. We matched the landscaping, we matched the pavers. We're doing the whole surface and expensive concrete pavers. We have kind of upper end architectural, metal roofs, hardy plank. So this was a design where we tried to integrate it into the park, the arched entry feature, et cetera, so that you get to feel like it's part of the park that's down there already. Then, Thomas, I think I'm going to let you talk about the public benefit statement since you wrote it.
Is that towards the end of the?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, thanks, Parker. Yeah, I'll touch on that in a second, but what I'd like to do just to wrap up, and then we can go to the next step in the hearing, is I just wanted to point out a couple. Probably don't need to say that we respectfully disagree with some points in the staff report, but we do, and I'd like to just point out a couple of those as I could as we wrap up. What I'm looking at is the most recent version of the staff report that was updated for this hearing. On page 3 of that report, the sentence or the paragraph starting with Article 12, Section 8.2 of the LDC talks about projects needing to be consistent with the comp plan and the adopted redevelopment plan for the area, and that paragraph goes on to talk about the E-zone plan. So I wanted to
Can I interrupt you for a second, Tom?
Yes.
There's actually, I don't think you have the most recent report. Does yours say updated or corrected by?
Let's see here. Yep. Actually, I think it does say updated. I may have
Okay.
grabbed the.
We issued a new staff report that removes any discussion about inconsistency based on the E-zone master plan.
Okay, I didn't realize that, Kara.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
So, and this board is not to take in, the E-zone is an opt-in plan, so we're not going to consider whether or not this is consistent with the E-zone master plan since they retain their underlying development rights.
Right. Well, that's perfect, because that's exactly where I was headed with that, because the underlying comp plan designation literally talks about active amusement rides, which is pretty clearly what we're proposing here. So that's the main point I wanted to make in wrapping up. Let me see if there's anything else. I think Parker touched on the parking. So, yeah, look, again, we're excited about the opportunity to do the project. We do think it'll be an asset. It's a first-class project. It's a first-class developer. Would really appreciate your support, available to answer any questions that you might have, and would like the opportunity to respond to any comments that might be made.
Great.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Tom. Does the board prefer to ask questions now or let the public speak first and then get to questions? Any suggestions? I'm interested in just letting the other opponents speak, and then we can ask our more informed questions.
Yes.
Okay. Who do we have to speak in opposition to this? Alex?
Thank you, Mr. Webster. Board members, Alex Ford, 145 East Rich Avenue, DeLand. I represent Boardwalk at Daytona Development, LLC. And first of all, as a matter of law, you should be following your comprehensive plan. The staff report indicates several blatant inconsistencies with your comp plan, so I think everything else is surplusage. But let's assume they're able to overcome that. There's still plenty of reasons to deny this application. First of all, the current zoning does not allow amusement rides. Now, I know that's not a reason for denial, but there's plenty of zoning that does allow it. And my question is, why would you increase the area for this type of use if you don't already have just an overwhelming demand? Why are you going to create, basically, I've done work for big box retailers, and one of the big arguments about moving a big box is the dark stores. Well, why are you going to create a dark store? Why are you going to create a situation where you have other amusement areas that are available for putting amusements on, but yet you're creating new area for those amusements that there's really no call for it? So the question I raise there is, as a postage stamp size parcel, is this desirable? I don't think it is. Now, if you're talking about an overall development, a larger scale, as is discussed in your comprehensive plan, then it might be desirable. But on a postage stamp size lot, I don't think that's in the public interest. In fact, I think when you take this one lot out of the equation, you actually impede the ability of doing a more strategic development in this area. Because now this project is going to take up a site that might otherwise be used for a comprehensive development. There's some suggestion about all the investment that would be made here. Most all that investment would be not ad valorem, real property ad valorem taxes. It would be personal property. And so I think, as I understand it, there's a different formula there. I'm not sure how much of that money the city gets, but I don't really think it enhances your tax base like maybe it was suggested. Is there any compelling attribute to this project? Well, it takes up parking spaces that are designed to be used for the boardwalk, the pier, the beach. By the way, once you give those spaces up, you don't get them back. Unless they decide they want to change their development and have to come back to you for some other approval, you've given up those spaces forever. Is it so attractive? The pictures of the design itself are very nice, but these monumental structures going up in the air, I don't think that's really so attractive visually that it's going to be something that is really something the city wants to encourage. Again, if it's part of an overall comprehensive development where you're bringing other things in that are desirable, maybe so. But in this limited situation, I don't think so, not on this postage stamp size lot. The proximity to the road. To me, it seems like it would be very distracting. And as motors drive by, these things going up and down and sideways and people throwing up in the vomitron and all that kind of stuff, I just don't, it almost seems like a traffic hazard to me, this location. Now, something that, and also I noticed that in the presentation, the staff presentation, there were a number of points that were not addressed at all by the applicant. So I'm assuming the applicant agrees with staff on the points that were not discussed. One of those is the alcoholic beverage service standard. The properties at RDB 5 on either side, they have certain standards they have to follow. These folks, by going through this application process, would be allowed to avoid that. They're going to have basically a very small bar that doesn't meet the standards that RDB 5 would have to comply with. They don't have to have a minimum of 50 permanent seating for 50 patrons. They don't have to have year-round business. They don't have to have a full-service kitchen. And the biggie, they don't have to provide off-street parking. So now staff calculates you require 31 parking spaces. Developer says 9 spaces. I say, what's the big deal? They're proposing to do 0. They're saying they're required to have 9, but they're only proposing 0. So who cares whether it's 30, 31, 9, or 10,000? The point is they're asking for 0. So is this really a place for this development? Well, we heard from Mr. Sullivan that they have an existing ride on a month-to-month lease. I will tell you that as it happens, I represent the landlord there, and there's some dispute over that. But I can tell you, to my knowledge, there's been no effort to negotiate a longer-term lease. Now, maybe there's one that I'm not aware of, but I'm not aware of any effort to negotiate a long-term lease where they sit right now. Mr. Sullivan said that the slingshot would go away. So I'm not sure if the selling point there is now instead of, one, you'll have three, but the one will go away, so we won't have four. I'm not sure what the selling point is there, but I would remind the board that my client, who owns that site, he would still have his entitlements. So if the point they're making is that you would still only have three, you wouldn't have four rides, we would still have entitlements to that, and there's actually entitlements to 2 rides on that site, existing. There's only 1 on the site. Mr. Mitchenberg talked about the use of public parking and gave us a very nice presentation about the landscaping and design. And those things are very nice, but I think they're a distraction from the points that the staff made about why this is not consistent with your comprehensive plan and the impacts on the surrounding area, the parking and such as that. Yes, I'm sure they spent lots of money on their plans, but people know going in. I do this kind of work too, and we know going in that we spend this kind of money, particularly when we're trying to create a change. There is a risk to that, and that's part of the business. I'm hoping that y'all aren't going to feel sorry for them because I spend a little bit of money on attorneys and planners and engineers, and recommend approval for that reason. Navigational lights, that's great. It's going to draw more attention to these things sticking up in the air. Could we go back to that? There was a slide with the roller coaster site. Can we get back to that? Okay. And then, yes, you can fit a lot of stuff on one of these sites, but one thing I noticed with this site is they also have lots of parking provided. So yes, you can fit it on a postage stamp site, but it's appropriate to have parking. It's appropriate there, it's appropriate here. The suggestion was made that this is a vacant lot, and so therefore we need to get it developed. And my suggestion to you respectfully is don't sell yourself out now for the easy development. It's currently zoned till, I saw in the staff report they've had, I think, 2 site plan approvals for retail use. There is obviously has been interest in this site. There will continue to be interest in this site. If you want to allow something to happen, they have the right to develop it in accordance with its current zoning. And I would never suggest that should not be allowed. But to change the zoning to allow something that does not meet what y'all have been trying to do in this area, I respectfully suggest that's not a good idea. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Thank you, Alex.
Thank you.
Do we have any other public for or against? Okay. Board, we have questions? Of Alex, okay.
Could you explain that about the entitlements on the existing site? I didn't understand.
The point was made that when this, if this were granted, that the existing ride on the property just to the north, I don't know the street address of it, but the ride, same ride they have, I can't remember the name of the ride either.
That's right.
But when they move that it would go away. Well, there's still, we still have the entitlement to put rides on that site. In fact, this is not the existing ride on that site. There was a prior ride that was taken down, and this one was put on it.
So what you're saying is we can have two parcels?
You could have competing.
Two competing.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions of Alex? Okay. Tom, would you like to say something before we
Yes.
get any questions? Okay.
I would, if it's all right. I'd just like to respond to some of the comments from Mr. Ford, if that's all right. Just referring to my notes on his comments. First of all, regarding the comp plan, I think the city attorney mentioned at the start of my comments that the portions of the staff report talking about the project being inconsistent with the E-zone plan, it's an opt-in plan. The underlying comprehensive plan designation specifically allows active amusement rides. I think that's important to note. Secondly, with regard to, I think Mr. Ford mentioned that there's a lack of demand, a concern about the use going dark. I can assure you, I can promise you that we would not be in a position to pay a lot of money for this property and to add additional costs in terms of putting up world-class attractions. So it's about a $4 or $5 million investment. I can assure you that our client would not be willing to do that if we had any concern whatsoever about the business not succeeding. We're very confident that it'll do very well at this location. Particularly in light of the fact that the existing slingshot ride does well a few hundred feet away. On the tax base point, I can tell you it's certainly going to increase the tax base over a vacant lot. I think that's pretty evident. And that lot, my understanding, has been vacant for years. As I mentioned before, we actually have this property under contract for purchase. We've had a lot of dialogue with the existing landowner. He hasn't had any real projects that have he's even come close to putting the property under contract with anyone other than us. With regard to the comment and the question that came up about, well, what if this project moves forward and the existing slingshot ride goes away and another use comes in that area? Well, that's certainly a possibility. I mean, we don't have any, that property zoned for that use today. That's why there's a slingshot ride and other rides on it. If a replacement ride came up in the future, we'd welcome the competition. We think that's part of creating a vibrant atmosphere in that area that's going to draw additional foot traffic. It's going to benefit surrounding businesses. We don't have any, I think that's an observation, but it's not something that I disagree with. And we certainly aren't saying that by this moving that something else can't go there. If it goes there, we think that'd be good too. The parking comment, I know Parker kind of covered this in his comments, but I mean, yes, we are asking to not provide any on-site parking, and here's the gist of why that is. The existing attraction, the existing slingshot ride doesn't have on-site parking. This would replace that in the short term. I can't speak to when something else might come there in the future. We're right on the, when you look at the location of the property, I mean, we're right on the other side of that parking lot. That's where people park to go to the slingshot ride today. None of those rides have any on-site parking. We feel like this use is in keeping with that use. People are already down there to go to different activities on the boardwalk, and they come to our ride. We rely on foot traffic, essentially people that are already in the area that will come to use, come as patrons onto the site. The other thing, I think there's a synergy. I think there was a reference in the staff report about, well, this might impact parking spaces for some of the public uses in the area. Well, and I think the existing operational experience of the actual slingshot ride is pretty important here. It's busiest at night. I mean, I'm sure y'all have been down there, you'll see it's more active at night. So for uses on the beach side, beaches and that, there's kind of a complementary factor there of people that are maybe there during the day to go to some things on the beach. In the evening, those folks aren't there. There's parking spaces that open up. As Parker said, we're talking about a year-round use. During different times of the year, there's plenty of spaces that are available. Let's see if there's any other points I wanted to make. Look, the last point I'd make about what Mr. Ford said, I mean, he acknowledged to you that he represents our landlord. I've got a letter from him earlier this year, from March 2013. This particular letter raised our rent. So I knew that he did represent that landlord. But I submit to you, I respect the need for him to represent his client's interests, but I think protecting a rental income stream going forward is not a legitimate basis. It's not part of your zoning criteria. So with that said, we're available for questions and appreciate your support.
Thanks, John. Okay, why don't we start with Teresa?
No questions.
No questions?
I have no questions either. Thanks.
Design professional.
I have several questions.
I knew that was coming.
I would just like to ask in general, I missed the meeting last month, so I'd just like to ask everybody in the room, what is the difference, in your personal opinion, of the amusement park with the Ferris wheel and the roller coaster and the race car, the tracks, and this amusement type of amusement? Can somebody, I'm just kind of at a loss here about what's the difference of this type of amusement, and is it just the height of the structures?
I believe I'm no expert, but I believe they're zoned for it, and they're a block-off A1A.
So that's the main,
Well, I don't, I mean,
Well, there's maybe three things going on
Okay.
here, and you just heard two of them. One is it's zoned for the amusement rides now. They've been there a long time. Historically, amusement rides, amusement activities, that's what's traditionally been there. So it's been there a very long time. I think that the other point is that there is a parking lot that's part of the same ownership that's tied to these amusement rides, which are temporary in their nature, okay? And so they were granted to be there by this board under a conditional use. And they were intended to be temporary until such time that the Boardwalk Hotel or something would be developed there based on an agreement that the property owner that has the Ferris wheel property was able to pursue, building that hotel. So that you can see it's an entirely different situation in terms of location, what is already entitled there in terms of zoning and amusement rights. In this case, the RDB5 district doesn't allow amusement rides. You have to go through this planned development to ask for that.
But read
Get it.
the current rides that are down there are temporary, and if we get the hotel built in there, then they would, my understanding is, go away.
They would go away, or again, and I think this is for anyone that has rides, and certainly they have some great rides here, would have to find a new home somewhere in the area that's appropriate. And that's the question before us tonight, is whether or not it makes sense to take this small lot and put private amusement rides right here on A1A.
Okay?
I need some clarification. I understand that the roller coaster, the car track, and the Ferris wheel, they are temporary. And legally, they understand that they're temporary, and if a hotel gets built there, they would all have to move someplace else.
Yes, they're
Correct.
leasing the property.
They're leasing it. But these people are purchasing this land, so they would be, that would be permanent. They would not be obliged to move, correct? Is that the main
So
difference
we
here?
understand.
Well, that's one difference, yeah.
Well, I'm just trying to figure
Yeah.
this out, okay. All right. Okay, so I think I understand that. As in regards to the parking, I'm really glad that there's no parking with this amusement park, because I think that the parking on the beach side of A1A is most unattractive and has no aesthetics to it at all, or any kind of redeeming aesthetics as far as attractiveness. And so I'm glad that the people that would be using this park would have to go park in a garage and not take our beautiful beachside for parking. So I see that as a plus. And I think that's it.
Okay. Randy or Carrie?
I do have a few questions. It was just hit just for a second. There is definitely intention of selling alcohol on premises?
Yes, that's one of the requests.
Okay. And the current height of the old slingshot, the current one, what is the height of that right now? I didn't really see that in the memo.
I don't have that information currently.
It's currently 180 feet.
It's 190. So from what I'm just seeing here, your slingshot, what they're bringing in here is going to be about 220 feet?
It's actually 240 feet.
240? Okay.
And in answer to that, it's just obviously as technology's developed, that ride is an old model.
Could you just,
Oh, sorry.
microphone that help?
Sorry.
It's okay.
Richie Armstrong, 2830 Rockella Court in Kissimmee. I represent the Funtime Group. We have been a manufacturer and operator of amusement rides for 25 years. That ride was installed over 10 years ago.
Right.
Unfortunately, because of us living on a month-to-month lease, then we don't have the opportunity to reinvest in that property. Since that time, through technology and the development of our rides, then we've improved the rides and obviously made them more attractive and more attractive to people as well. So we can actually, at the moment, we're based on a roof. Our engineering in those days was still fantastic because we were able to manufacture a ride and actually operate it from the roof of the arcade. This will actually be permanent location. We'll buy the property and in answer to your question, yes, it's a permanent home. That's what we want in Daytona. We want to be here forever. We'll purchase the land, we'll put the rides there. That will obviously be have foundations in the ground so we can build actually a superior model, a more modern model.
Okay. How state-of-the-art are these rides?
These will be, these rides aren't built and put in store and sold. We build them to order. If you give us the permission to do this, these rides will be built next year, and they are, because we manufacture the rides, everything we do is state-of-the-art. It's the latest technology we actually install into our rides. These rides are computer-driven. That will be built next year, and it'll have all the latest technology. All three of those rides will be built next year to order and be of the latest technology.
Okay. Randy, anything else?
I think that's good.
Harry, you have no questions? Okay.
Dan, if I could just, on the alcoholic beverages, just because we didn't address
Please,
that.
yeah, go
I
ahead.
forgot to not address that. Let me just talk, this is the cafe that we would serve the beverages in. It's a 12-seat cafe to just give you a feel. The intent behind it is if you're there, as Parker says, with his kids, and they're going up in the ride, and he doesn't want to go up in the ride himself, you may want to sit there and have a beer or a Coke or something and watch them. And that's kind of what we're going. It's not a bar. It's just we just wanted to offer that. To be totally frank with you, it's not an essential feature of the business. It's just a feature that we wanted to provide, we have that. And so, I mean, I'm sure everyone at some point's been to Busch Gardens or SeaWorld. I mean, it's not it's sort of in keeping with things that are offered there. But I did want to point that out. If that is not an essential feature, but we'd like to have, and that's all I want to say about that.
I have a question. Is it beer and wine, or is it
Yeah,
alcohol?
it's just beer and wine. Yes,
Okay.
just beer and wine.
Okay. Thanks, Tom. I tell you, I struggled with this when I got the application last month. And this month I looked at it again, and while it had been polished a little bit, and I was still struggling. I went out there this afternoon and walked the whole thing. And then I had the opportunity to meet before the meeting with Parker and such and explain. And I was real concerned about this little bitty project with this huge rides right there by A1A. I was concerned that, what about those rides swinging out there and right on the perimeter? And explained, well, when they hit the perimeter, they're going to be 75 feet in the air. Okay? So I was concerned about driving down the highway and, somebody's thinking something's coming at them, but I don't think that's going to happen because they're going to be 30, 40, 50, 70 feet up. It's going to be out of your vision. So, you'll have to look way up in order to see this thing swinging by. So I was comforted by that. I was concerned about this little bitty project being all by itself down there. And then Parker explained how they've totally integrated this site plan with the park and on the one side and the landscaping and the park and the roadway on the other side, and how it's in essence going to be an integral part of the park area. We got the park across the street. I thought, well, you're going to have a fence and perimeter fence on this? No, it's going to be open. They're going to secure the rides and the buildings and such. But other than that, it's going to be open park, just like the park across the street. And so to me, that kind of gives us the whole, helps bring together a part of the E-zone in that corner without the city having to spend the money on it. And because I tell you, I was very reluctant about this, but when I started looking at that and they're explaining it and how it all works, I'm real concerned about the alcohol. And explain, well, it's just 12 seats and, it's really soda or a beer or something. And okay, I can relate to that. It's not like we're building a pub there. We're not trying to have alcohol as a primary thing. It's just like, well, you're there and, you might have a beer or two or something while you watch your kids. And I can relate to that. The parking issue. I'm a believer that all of Main Street, all of the boardwalk, all this area for the most part, should not have to provide parking. We should be having public parking in that area and continuing to work on that too, and I need to talk to you, Reed. But to me, I think you're totally correct. What a waste to put 20 or 30 parking spaces on a property right here, okay? We've got parking to the left of this, we've got parking on the other side, we've got parking over at the Peabody, we got all that Ocean Center parking that's grossly underutilized. We need to put projects in that are of a high quality, that I think are gonna draw other businesses and encourage more growth in that area. And I think that's what I'm seeing in this project. It's a high quality, it's going to be permanent. We don't have to worry about, you know, if you look at last month's staff report, they had a picture of the E-zone and what's planned out there and such. And yeah, there's hopes of big hotel there along the boardwalk, and I think it's gonna come one of these days. And when it does, these rides that are there would disappear then, okay? This is gonna, I think, provide some balance to the other side of Main Street. It's gonna give us a 365-day-a-year draw, not something that's there for 2 or 3 weeks out of the year. The parking to me is a non-issue. The fact that it actually integrates with the park on the ocean is gonna be open. It's gonna provide enhanced access with the wheelchair access and everything through the ramps, both to this and to the ocean. I think it's one of those things that, yeah, it looks scary at first, but when you really study it and see how they've designed it, and that, yeah, it's gonna be tall, but it's not gonna be blocking hotels. None of the designs show hotels across the street from this, really. That would be a problem to this. So I was concerned. I've looked at it. I feel very comfortable about it. I think it's something that we should do because this is the kind of project we're not, you know, Hard Rock may come, it may not come. The other project may come, may not come. But this is something that is here. I think it's tangible. I think it's a quality project. It's going to be a draw to that part of, really that's dark already. And we're going to bring some light, some sunshine, and you know, development in there that I think is going to be positive. Hopefully get some activity going in there, get some of the less desirable people moved out of there with activity. I think it's going to be a positive all the way around, notwithstanding the staff report. I think we meet the criteria as to the comp plan is what is significant. I think this is a significant project in that it's going to be a draw and it's going to bring other business and it's being done well. It's not, the comp plan doesn't say anything about it has to be so many acres to be a significant project. It just has to be significant. This is significant, and that's it's doing the job. It's doing the job well, and I think it's going to benefit the Main Street area. So I'm in favor of it.
I have a question. The existing slingshot ride that's there, is it all year-round draw?
Yes, ma'am.
And
you're going to be open basically 365, correct?
same.
Same hours of operation.
And what are those hours of operation?
I think the crew gets
Sure,
there.
it varies a little bit.
Yeah, it varies a little bit, but the crew gets there in the morning about 9. There's not too many folks there at that point, but it stays open a little bit past when the nightlife, nightlife wraps up. So they usually break everything down by about 3 in the morning, to be honest. So that's the same exact, no difference whatsoever between the current operational schedule of that existing ride versus what we would be providing here.
So it's consistent with the boardwalk and all
Yes.
that? And
Same, yeah, we wouldn't be changing that at all in terms of the timeframes and the full.
And
as
I
you
never
said-
hear anybody scream over at my house, so it must not be.
Yeah, it's funny, yeah, despite the name, yeah.
And noise is an issue with me,
Right.
but
I want to say one other thing.
Sure.
I want to really thank you for pointing that out about the integration with the park, because it really made me make a good decision here tonight. That was excellent.
Well, I was real concerned, but when I saw it, and you look back and you look at how this is designed, and you look at what's there now, it's going to kind of all flow and I think open up into and look like one project. And this will be an amusement section of what looked like the public park.
I think that's excellent point. Excellent
So,
point. selling
what are
point.
we going to do? Wait on another 7-Eleven to go in there? I would much rather have something like this that's a draw than another 7-Eleven.
I was making a joke. I said I can't, there's one beside it.
Oh, well, it could be a kangaroo. So, any further questions or comments from the board?
I'd kind of like to speak my mind on it.
Please.
Pretty tough. I mean, the design is immaculate. I like the site plan and everything else on it. But I'm going to have to disagree. And actually, for once, I can't actually believe I'm actually agreeing with what the city has to say on this. I like the idea. I like the aspect of it, but just being on A1A, I don't think it fits in with what we're trying to design down there. Even if it's just literally a property behind here that's on the beach, I think it would definitely interfere with a lot of the flow. It's what I've seen designed on the master plan. I've been on the one on I Drive, I've been on the one in Old Town, man. Just look at the photo on they have here. Look at the other surrounding stores. You know, I've been to especially this one right here, and you've got strip malls that are 99-cent T-shirt shops, and I think that I'm not saying that would 100% flow into that area, but you know, you get that, and then what do you have, like a Fridays Chili's 99-cent T-shirt shop just building on every side of the property there? I think it's a decision that it should not be so hasty. I think we should really think about it, having a 240 square or tall object sitting there right on A1A, crossing right when you come over the bridge, and you get, you know, those lights and everything. I'd much rather see a nice skyline instead of neon towers sitting up where they're supposed to be hotels, you know, or businesses, something. I think it's, you know, and we've got what the gentleman said before, you know, now if they move over to there, now you're going to have another amusement ride right where the initial one is, and who's to say they don't tear that one down and just put another one up or something else? And now you've got another tower with another tower, and I just don't think that's an applicable spot. I think just even putting it right on the beach, so if something does get built, it might at least cover it just for the street side and just deal with it when you're coming over the bridge. I just don't think it would be, I don't know, I've thought about it. I thought it, when I first saw it, I thought it was a great idea, but just having it right on A1A, just, something doesn't sit right with me about it.
Okay. Anyone else? Do we have a motion? No motion? No, we
Be in the affirmative.
Yeah, somebody needs to move it forward in the positive, whether you agree with it or not.
Yeah. I don't get to make the motions.
I just want to say this, that comment about the night parking down there, that there's spaces available. They may be available some nights in October, but in the summer season, it's very difficult to park down there at night. There's been columns written by editorialists in the News Journal about how terrible the parking situation is down on the beach side on summer nights. It's really bad, and while I agree with you that it's almost unworkable to ask each business to provide so many parking places for their use, but that's where we are today, and until a parking garage gets built, we're suffering with this situation. And I mean, I don't know. I think we all have to meet the parking requirements. I do.
I'm on International, I have to deal with it myself,
Yeah.
so.
Parking is not to be taken lightly.
Understood. I just think if we get enough business going that the parking is going to come to, somebody will be forced to then build it, and they're not going to build it until we get it to a point where there's enough demand for it too, so.
And they're not going to build it on the beach side. They're going to build it on the west side.
Reed?
Yeah, and this is maybe just because I've heard it more than a couple times, but, you know, this goes back to, okay, we have vacant stores, vacant lots on A1A. Now, we've had that, you know, for some time now, and you can look at those same lots or the same buildings. They've been there certainly since the economy went sour back in 2000. 7, 8. And we just have to realize that we're just now coming out of that low spot. And in this case, there was a store there, and there was a fire, and I think it was around 2006, about 2006, that the building went away, and since then, property owners tried to come through twice before this board and successfully had a conditional use approved for a retail building there. And we just never had any pursuit of actually pulling permits to build something. But, you know, again, it all comes down to sometimes on all of what we're trying to do is timing. But I'll leave it at that.
Well, can we get a motion?
Not in favor.
Well, you don't have to be in favor of it to make a motion or a second. Nobody wants to make them, come on now.
Yeah, the motion is not indicative
Yeah,
of
of how
your
you vote.
feelings on the matter.
I guess I'll make the motion.
All right, we have a motion to approve the rezoning. That's the motion you have to make. Okay, you don't have to vote that way.
Yeah.
All right, do we have a second on that?
Second.
Carrie seconds it. All right, any discussion? All those in favor of the motion? Let's do a roll call vote, please.
Ms. Stone? No. Ms. Ramsey?
Yes.
Mr. Lee?
No.
Ms. Register?
No.
Mr. Phillips?
No.
Chairman Webster?
Yes. The motion fails. Gentlemen, thank you all very much.
I think for the record, we need to go ahead and
Oh,
vote
on
on
the
the
second.
site plan as
All right.
well.
Very good. Can we have a motion with respect to the site plan? For approval of the site plan?
I'll motion to vote.
All right. Carrie seconds. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Stone? No.
What are we voting on?
The site plan.
Ms. Ramsey?
I need clarification, I'm sorry.
I'm sure you do too.
All right, we're voting on the second item, number 6 on the agenda, which is the site plan. Approval, which pretty much fails as a matter of course because of the,
I was going to say, what's the difference?
I believe because of it, but
Well,
it says we
yeah.
need to do it, so.
Yeah, the first one was the first consideration was, is this the right place for it? Now, the second one is, okay, ignoring the location of it, look at the site design. How do you feel about the site design?
Oh, okay.
Wait, can approve the site plan? You can't go forward without the zone, without.
No, they can still move forward with both of these applications to planning board. There would be minutes, you know, it's possible that this board could say, okay, the rezoning, it's not appropriate in this location, however, we do like the design of it. It's possible that could be what the minutes reflect. Maybe you guys don't like the site design at all, but we need the minutes to reflect the field.
What difference does it make
Because
So
if
can
you
I
like
ask,
the site plan or not?
just for clarification here, if the site plan, though, depends on the shape of the site, we'll say, right? So
Correct. Location, you know, but
Location,
it also
yeah.
may help the applicant with where they want to go with it, you know,
Okay.
so.
Oh,
I believe you already voted.
I already voted.
well, you were confused. Would you like to reconsider your vote?
Yes. I'd like to back up and, well, I really didn't fully reconsider the site plan because, I mean, I would say that certainly it is a masterful job of fitting these rides onto this area. And certainly all of the, I guess you would call them, I don't know, maybe it's interior, but all the finishes, I mean, the appearance of it is very well done. I mean, very attractive. I don't really object to the looks of it. My concerns were in other areas.
Okay, so is that a yes for the site plan?
My only problem is that it's at 25 South Atlantic Avenue. I guess it's no.
Okay,
Sorry.
very
Sorry
good.
about that.
I would echo Teresa's comments, but vote no as well.
Yes.
I also think you guys did a great job with what the plan looks like. I just do not like the location, so my vote is no.
Same thing as Gary, no.
And a yes again, please. Okay. Thank you. Thank you all very much. Okay. Next on the agenda, we're supposed to have the special events discussion again, which we got continued from last month, and I had stomach virus, and we had almost nobody here. And tonight, I'm recovering from a cold, and we have almost nobody here. So I'd like to ask that we move it again. If there's no objection, we'll just do that.
None.
Okay.
Do we need a,
Drive-in restaurant discussion, Reed?
do we need an official motion to continue it?
We just have consensus on it.
Yeah, that's not a applicant-driven item.
Okay.
Unless I had a concern as staff, but no, I'm okay with that. I would tell you on the other item, I think that Mr. Paspalakis had wanted us to discuss the drive-through. There's no backup or background for you at this time.
And Dino's not here, so we want
Right.
to roll that also then?
I think so at this point, unless somebody feels some urgency to discuss it. I think it would be best if he were here to participate in that.
Okay, that's good on my end. So we'll roll that. Then redevelopment projects update?
Well, just that we're coming up to board appointment time, and a few of you I want to catch before the end of the meeting. And if you have not filled out an application, you can do that online. Not all of you have to do it, so I will let you know if you're on the list for reappointment. I think it's important to know that, for example, we have one person that's in the South Atlantic redevelopment area that is going to term out, but he can continue on until we have a replacement, and that's Mr. Kostadakis, who, by the way, was intending on being here, but there was a family obligation that got extended, so otherwise he'd be here. But like has happened in the past, that until you fill that appointment, you stay on, unless you just say you want to resign and leave. Which brings me to you, Chairman Webster. I really appreciate all that you've done for us in the last 2 terms that you've served, and this is the last month for you officially. But until the city commission takes some action,
So that gives me another 6 months.
I think it could be, given our history. But I would tell you that at least right now, I think there's some intent to bring it to the city commission, but the city commission meetings are pushed back. So I don't know what's going to happen, if it'll be on the agenda, but the next opportunity would be their city commission's first meeting in January, which has been pushed back because it was right next to the holiday.
Well, I better get to my special events discussion in January.
Yeah, so which is important, because in January, your meeting is going to get pushed back a week, because the commission's moving a week. So we've have you scheduled in for January the 15th. It's a Wednesday. So it'll be just a little different. There's a little reminder on the agenda for everyone. Okay, good. Sometimes and we'll certainly make sure we remind you, so we don't come over here unless you're coming to the city commission meeting. And but some of you that might officially not be here, we'd hope that you'd continue until a replacement is provided. And I don't know, that could be a last minute thing, but I just want to make sure that the whole board is aware of those appointments. And I don't think no one else is terming out. And again, a couple reappointments. I'm not sure anyone else here has to get reappointed. So I'll see you after the meeting, or then Dustin, you're up for a reappointment.
So can I ask, Matt Bohan resigned from the board, correct?
Correct?
And his position was filled by a planning board member, correct?
Not yet.
No, I'm saying he was representing the planning
Yes,
board on
yes,
our board.
and so the planning board has to appoint a new member.
Okay. And do we know what their plans are for that?
Rich, any plans yet? Yeah, so the planning board will take some action.
Also, he resigned from the planning board as well. Okay, gotcha.
Right, so there'll be an
I thought he just didn't
opportunity.
like us.
No,
Turns out
no.
he
Well,
doesn't
that's
like
better,
anyone.
It wasn't our fault.
No, every,
But Reed, we need to get on the agenda for January too, appointment of a new co-chair, so
right, vice,
Vice chair,
vice
whatever.
chair and a chair. So following our bylaws, we would certainly attempt to do that as early as January.
yeah, because if you kick me off, then, then you're gonna be sitting here with nobody, so.
But we may not, so if you could just keep us on your calendar, it'd be greatly appreciated.
Until I'm removed,
That could be,
no problem.
okay.
Okay. All right. Is that the redevelopment
That-
projects update, or is that just the board update?
Again, next Wednesday, this is a sort of an important meeting for us in terms of two projects. The WC Grand is being amended, so Jack White hopefully will be able to go forward with a project that he and Mr. Chalice have been working on trying to market that, and they're going to try to do what they're doing downtown. You see they're just about finished with the infrastructure, and they're selling lots there, so our hope is we'll see the same thing happen over on the beach side now with those changes. Also will be the Hard Rock Hotel, the text amendment, the plan amendment you've seen. So that is all moving forward, and hopefully by the end of this year, we'll have made some decisions that we'll have two hotels. Really, it'll be the balls in the court of those who can finance and develop these projects and get some cranes in the air.
I actually went to the Hard Rock site just to check, and they had a flash little thing come by, is coming soon, and they showed the front page of the proposed plans that they gave out to us.
It's always promising.
Yes.
Let's hope. Okay, does that do the redevelopments, Reed?
That's it, other than to say happy holidays and happy New Year. And we will have a New Year event. Right?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, do we have any board comments? Teresa?
Thanks for all the Christmas holiday decorations the city's done. Looks nice down there.
Yeah.
I have no comment.
Does it? Nope. Nope.
I'm good.
Very good.
Everybody have a good year.
Y'all have a safe holiday season. See you in January.
You get healthy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's, now I know what's going on. Well, that was an entertaining meeting.
I thought that was just an excellent point you made. Completely transformed my opinion.
Not enough.